Today we're going to look at transforming your old wedding dress, and this is the start of my series on this subject. So if you get yours out of the attic, you may well find that it has a horizontal join between the bodice and the skirt. If so, you're already onto a winner. Today we're going to be taking this dress and we're going to be looking at how to turn it into a multi-way garment. Now, this is a very sustainable way of dressing. You make a piece which could be worn as a skirt or a dress, or even as a top. Several of the samples that I used for my book, Relovable, had horizontal joins at the waist, but I wanted to try a slightly different thing with each dress. So firstly, let's assess the fabric and potential. Now, what struck me about this dress is the huge volume of fabric that's in it. The fabric is a very floaty georgette, and that is perfect for creating a drapey look. If you have a look at your dress, it should say on the label what it's made of. If it is polyester, then were you to try and change the colour, you would need to use a synthetic dye. However, I decided to use paint because, again, it's slightly more eco-friendly and I wanted a little more control, and I wanted to create a design rather than just a block colour. The product I'm going to use is called Dynaflow, which is made by Jacquard Products. It's a fabric paint, but it behaves in a very similar way to a dye. I'm also using scissors, pins and an old printed canvas which I've turned upside down. Using something like an old canvas or a frame means that you can keep the fabric while you're painting it away from the actual surface, because if the fabric is lying on the surface and you paint on top of it, it's just going to go all smudgy. So you need to sort of elevate it a little bit, and I found this was a really good option. So your next step is to start unpicking. Now, you may well find, like me, that unpicking is one of the most therapeutic parts of remodelling a wedding dress. It really is a very beautiful thing to take some time over. So I would encourage you just to use your unpicker or a small pair of scissors and just gradually dismantle your dress. Keep all the threads, all the bits that you cut off. As you're unpicking, there are some bits that will come away easily, and there are some bits that probably might need a little bit of hacking. But just keep all of those bits, because you will be able to use them for other transformations later on. I've got lots of projects which I'll show you in other videos. The fabric of the skirt is so lovely. I really wanted my finished garment to have a very loose, flowing, abstract, floaty, almost holiday-ish sort of vibe to it. It's very important to create something you'll actually wear, so take your time to decide what you want to make. If you like what I've created, then keep watching it and I'll show you how. Once I'd separated the bodice from the skirt, I then took the skirt and I put it on a mannequin and pinned it in a number of different ways to see how it would work and whether I could make a multi-way garment from it. So when you look at this, this was actually the skirt itself. That's one side and this is the other side, and this was all gathered in to the waistband, which was then added to the bodice. So have a bit of fun, be a bit creative and try it out. You may well find that, like me, actually, once you unravel everything, you can place a couple of little points here and here and here and here, create an opening for arms, that actually, if you put a zip in the back, you can also make a skirt. The next stage is to do a little test with your paint to make sure you can get exactly the right colour. If you decide to go ahead and just paint your skirt without testing it, you'll probably have a lot of fun, but there is a bit of a risk that you just won't wear it because you may not like it. So I took a bit off the bodice and I used that as a test piece and did some blobs of colour. I used sort of different intensities. I tried adding more water, less water, until I got exactly the shade I wanted. I wanted really quite a kind of abstract watercolour sort of effect, so it took quite a few goes before I got exactly the kind of look I wanted. So once I'd done my unpicking, I'd separated the bodice from the skirt, I'd done my test patches for the colour, it was then time to get my models to try it on. So I had 3 different models of different body shapes, and I really wanted to find something that would work across the board. So I got each of them to try the piece on. So at the time, it was almost like just one big rectangle with a sort of bit in the middle to put your head through. But with a bit of judicious pinning, I was able to make it work either as a top or as a dress or as a skirt. I needed something that was going to help make it look finished. I don't like things where they're kind of scrappy and untidy, obviously because I'm a wedding dress designer. But for this, I just added this trim along the neckline and around the sleeves. And when worn as a skirt, that sort of worked as a waistband. So I just took the little trim off the neckline of the bodice. There was an awful lot on it. When you unpick, you'll be amazed at how much you find your wedding dress actually has in terms of embellishments and little trims, but keep them all. I think it's lovely and very authentic to be able to incorporate other features from your wedding dress into whatever you decide to model your dress into. So once I'd completed all the actual sewing and made the garment and anchored the points, it was then time to get it back onto my canvas board. I propped it up on, I think it was just a cardboard tube, in order to keep the fabric well away from the board. And I pinned it onto the board. Now, before I did that, while I had the dress on the models, I made little anchor points all over the top to make sure that I distributed the paint in a way that was going to be pleasing. I didn't want it to look blocky, I wanted it to look abstract, but I also wanted it to be very asymmetrical. But on this, you can see some of it has virtually no colour. And then there are other areas where it's much more dense. And I just wanted, when you moved around, for you to be able to see the colour here, but not there. And I really like a diagonal sweep when it comes to the design of colour. I wanted a very kind of watercolour effect. So in some areas I put water on the fabric, then I just literally dropped one tiny little drop of paint and just let it spread. And you can see from the video, when the skirt is actually on the board, it's very difficult to see which bit you're looking at. So I can highly recommend put your garment on and then just use a pin or sticker or anything you've got, but just to make a slight indication of where you think the colour would look nice. Little painting tip, at some point you're probably going to want to wash your garment, and typically unless you fix a paint or a dye, it will wash out. So in this instance I used a product called Airfix, which is just, it's like a white kind of milky substance. You mix it in with your paint, the bottle will tell you what sort of ratio you need to mix them in. And it just means that once your garment is dry and that you've finished your painting, then it will literally fix just with air. It just makes it colour fast, and it means if you did want to wash it, you could. I'd recommend doing a little bit of testing with it. So when you do your test patch, do it with Airfix and then just literally wash it in a washing up bowl and see how it looks. But the colour should stay there. It certainly did for this. So can you believe that this wedding dress turned into this garment, which could be worn so many different ways? So are you tempted to get your wedding dress out of the loft? Maybe have a look at it, see if it's got a horizontal join. If you hold it up and consider the bodice not being there, you may well have a contender for a very simple garment that make and wear multiple different ways with very little sewing. I would love to know what you've got in the attic, so do please leave me a comment, and you're really welcome to ask any questions. I think that remodelling a wedding dress is quite complicated. I do offer a service where I can advise people on what to do with their old wedding dresses, and I'll be doing lots more videos that accompany my book that will show you exactly what you can do with your old wedding dress to hopefully inspire you to bring it back into your life again so you can really enjoy it. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.